Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody out there? This is Paul Pedron, backline support engineer in North America, talking to you from home, right? I hope you guys are safe. Most of all, I hope you're safe and family safe. Easter week starting Sunday, so I hope you're enjoying that with your families and celebrating with families. And in this pandemic of the coronavirus, I thank you for being able to join us here and talk a little bit today about some of the things that are coming down in ZENworks. But most often, most important, stay safe. Be safe. Microfocus is fully staffed here to help you, so be aware that give us a call if you're doing any of those upgrades or support things needed. Please give us a ring so that we can assist you through that. What is ZENcast? ZENcast is basically a forum for you guys to interact with us and be able to ask questions, see demonstrations, and understand what's going on with the product in basically almost real time. So we're here for you. We want to make sure that you're informed and that you have the needed resources so that you can continue leveraging your ZENworks products. Please ask questions along the way. You notice there's a poll in the stream, in the chat right now. It's open. What locations are you joining today? So if you have a chance, go ahead and just put in what your vote is. You type exclamation vote, and then any of those particular, I'm in North America, so I'll say, oops, let me go down there. I'll do vote, and then NA. And just like that, and it'll kind of tell us where you're coming from. I know we have it all across the globe, and I know we get a lot of recording viewers as well, and thank you for viewing. If you're not able to make it now, but able to watch the viewing, we appreciate that. I hope this is informative for you. And we're on week 7 of the 9-week stretch of this pilot, so I think we're getting some good feedback. We got a couple weeks left. Hope to be able to continue this past the pilot. We'll discuss that near the end. Thanks, Vamsi, for putting in your vote there. Coming from Asia Pacific, thank you so much for joining us. He's one of our engineers on stream today. So he's is a little bit of housekeeping. So again, you do an exclamation point commands or exclamation point vote. You'll be able to put in and respond. If you put an @ sign, like I'm going to say hello to Vamsi, and if you notice, if you do an @ sign and type the first couple letters of their name will come up, and I can type hello and talk directly to him, and then he actually gets a highlighted version of that, so he knows somebody's talking directly with him. So thanks, Vamsi, for letting me use you as a guinea pig there. So just to let you know, @ sign username, and you can respond directly. You can just type in chat. I'll keep monitoring it throughout the cast so that we can answer those questions you have. Do realize there's a 60 to 90 second delay, and that's on purpose. That's by design for our moderators. So, but be aware that we'll try and catch up with you. If you have other questions after this cast, you can always post them on the recordings, and I'll get back to the comments afterwards, and you can see them there. If there's any links that we go through, if there's any downloads or any of those things, I'll have them in the description of this particular recorded cast. Okay? So just so you know, that housekeeping issues there. So last week we had Vikram Goyal on, the product manager for ZENworks, and he talked a little bit about ZCM and actually demoed some of the native Windows MDM features we have coming up. So thank you, Valerie, for coming in again. Good to see you. Glad you're able to join us. So he was able to show some Windows MDM features. Today it's going to be a little bit different. We're gonna try something a little bit different. We're gonna do a roundtable. So I've invited some engineers on stream, and we're going to be talking about system updates, the ZENworks system updates. We have customers, still on 11.3 that need to do the push to 2020. or at least getting on to 2017, 11.4, 2017. Thank you, Steve, for coming on in. Appreciate your joining us. So we're going to go ahead and have a roundtable discussion, and that's going to involve a little bit of your interaction, right? Those questions that you have that you're trying to understand about a system update. Do I update the database first before I do it, but it's not supported on the prior version? Those types of things. So we're really looking for your interaction this week, and I'm getting a lot of people coming in and talking in chat, so I appreciate that. Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming in. So we're going to see how this one works. We're going to have some things to display on the screen, a little light on demos itself, but I think the intent is to get you that information for your upgrade, right? System upgrades, or things you always wanted to know about the system upgrades. So we're gonna try that this time, and have some things to display. We're going to first go through conference news. So again, YouTube ZENcast, the YouTube channel is live, and we're through April 27th. That'll be the last of the pilot. That day, we'll go over some of the surveys and see what management's feeling about if we're grabbing enough people, if people are participating, if you guys like it, if we get responses from you. And so far, everything looks positive. We'll probably change the cadence from every week to a longer cadence, either every other week or monthly, but that's to be determined. So if this continues on, there'll be a couple of adjustments, but we want to adjust it for you so that you're able to get the full benefit of this. Okay. Micro Focus Virtual Universe for the USA is coming May 19th through the 21st, so you can register there. Be sure you could just type in Google Micro Focus Virtual Universe USA, and it'll take you there, so you don't have to remember that long event ID number. So that exploded in EMEA this year. They just had a lot of participants doing the virtual, and it really, I know it takes away from the personal touch as far as face-to-face, but it really had some great attendance, and people got a lot out of it, and were able to find their rooms and see the products that Micro Focus provides for you. Also, TTP 2020 USA is going virtual, and this is only temporary. If you've been there before and you know Peter, he loves the face-to-face and customers, but in this particular time, we're going to have to go virtual on this one, and you can register on the TTP USA site, thettp.org, and I checked last week, it wasn't available yet to register. I didn't check this week, so possibly it's coming soon. I did talk to Peter that being able to register is soon, so be aware that that's there. Let me go and adjust my news feeds to the product. So product upgrade, product news. Again, this is similar to last week. Lighthouse program is in effect, and we got this ZCM 2020 Update 1. Lighthouse program is going. Target release is in May, so look for it next month. I mean, we're getting close. PRU April 2020 came out beginning of the month. ZENworks patch management subscriptions for extended security updates, and you can also do those manually if you wish to and not have that subscription. And then ZENworks reporting server security patches were released on the online updates channel. So if you have appliances, be sure to double check that online updates occasionally. A service desk has a 3-month cadence, and of course we need to keep the security up on the appliances. So ZENworks reporting server appliance had their security patches released as well. Great news about the DB migration tool. Version 3 is out there, so you can do with one tool any upgrade to PostgreSQL, either Sybase, MS SQL, or Oracle. So be aware that those are there. It's version 3 is the one you want to grab. So if you've downloaded one previously, grab version 3 if you need to do Oracle. Otherwise, you're able to actually get off those other platforms, moving to the PostgreSQL. And we have some customers doing that. So engineering really worked hard to get that taken care of and get all those built in, and it's just seamless. We did a ZENcast a couple weeks ago and did the Sybase and I think MSSQL both, and it just works. So be aware and go back and look at that recording if you haven't seen it yet, and there'll be some training videos coming out soon. Windows operating systems, remember the end of life for some of your products. Okay, we know 7's out of the woods, except for the extended security updates if you have to keep them around. And Windows 10 just is tomorrow or today is end of life for the extended support for 1709. So just kind of threw those in there to let you know about those particular OSs. And then, of course, Service Desk version 8.1.2 was released in January. 8.2 Target is released in summer, but there may be they may have an 8.1.3. We're not sure, depending on what's needed and fixes and what they're going to put out there. But Service Desk 8.2 Target public release late summer, and that'll be in the technical portal. That will require a side-by-side because the OS changes, so you need to do a side-by-side and move that VA storage directory. Service Desk Compliance, as I mentioned, the security updates were released in May, and they also have a database migration tool to go from to PostgreSQL. Okay, so be aware that they have that if you need to move off that MSSQL platform for Oracle. To go to Postgres. Tongue-tied today. Okay, everybody awake? Aaron, thanks for coming in. Virtual universe in chat so we can click on it. Sure, yeah, let me work on getting that. That's actually a screenshot. I will, we'll get to that. Let me make a note. Good point. I should have those as I go through them. If there's links, just put them in chat as we go. We'll get that for you. Thanks for bringing that up. We're going to go on into webinars. So we had a series of recordings, Q4, Q1 for 2020, upcoming webinars again. It hasn't been finalized yet, but Q2 is being worked on. And then don't forget about the free training for on-demand courses. There's ZENworks highlights videos for free, Service Desk tutorials for free, and first look at Microsoft Desktop Containers are free. There's a series of videos out there, short and long, depending if it's a system update, which is a little longer, or just a quick feature show. It'll show you that particular feature in detail. Double check that on demand. And again, these links will also be in the description of this recorded broadcast. Okay, so be aware that if you come back later, you can see them in the description if I don't get to all of these details this morning. On demand. Okay, how we doing out there? Everybody okay? We're going to go back into recent recordings. So we did have some recent recordings, and we did from app management to the Windows 10 deployment imaging, Service Desk, and roadmap reviews. But I also wanted to mention the recent ZENcast recordings. So we did database migration, Sybase to PostgreSQL. We did an appliance migration, appliance upgrade to 8.1.2 ZRS connecting to ZSD and ZCM. We had some detailed reporting from Jason Backett on ZRS, connecting to Service Desk, desktop containers, and configuration management. And then we have the native Windows 10 MDM features that were displayed last week from Vikram. I do want to mention that, of course, these are demos that we've done online. We're working on getting them into a trading platform of some sort. So you have some screenshots. You know where the logs are if you're doing some troubleshooting, those types of things. So those are in the works. I got 4 of them pending, and doing some final details on those. So those should be released soon. You'll see them out on YouTube, and then you'll also see them on the on-demand free site. So be aware that those are there. Let's move down to our next, which would be the forum news. Okay, so if you didn't see it, COVID microfocus tools. If you go to the link, and again, Aaron, I appreciate your mention. You can go and see the tools that Microfocus has, and I also saw that Filer was there's a license out there for Filer through September. If you need to use that for your at-home workers or off-network workers, however you want to mention it. So they're offering that to help during this pandemic. Don't forget about troubleshooting. Documentation is out there. Knowledge base is out there. Support forums. This doesn't exclude any of that. This is just to help inform you even more. So some of those reminder tips that, oh, by the way, we have this. And it's like, yeah, there we go. So just want to have this as a reminder cast for you. And we have ZCM 2020 Update 1. Some of the things that are coming in 2020 Update 1 are performance improvements, web app improvements, dashboard enhancements, Mac Catalina support, remit enhancements. So some highlights there. Platform support for iOS 13 provisioning profile and Windows ESU workflow, which we've discussed the last couple of times, the extended security updates, right? So be aware that those are there. I'm so glad you guys are present. What are we doing today? Let's see what we're doing today. Moving on to, we're gonna go over to here, and we have our teams. We have a few engineers on the line with us today, not only in chat. I saw Steve logged in, but we also have some engineers both here in Provo and out in Bangalore, India. How are you guys doing? Can we do a little roundtable and have you guys just tell us who you are so that we can go through? Vamsi, you're on?
Sure, Paul. Yeah, I'm on. So I'm the lead architect on the ZENworks engineering team. I work from Bangalore office, about close to 17 years on the product. So that's about me.
Fantastic, 17 years. So you've seen a little bit of change. So that goes back, 17 years goes back to almost what? 3.12? Oh, I'm thinking Novell 3.12, aren't I? What version did you come in on?
Yeah, it was ZENworks 4.
4, right. 4, and then it went to 6, 6, 5, and 7. That's right.
Correct.
Well, that's great. Glad to have you aboard. You've seen a lot of changes and improvement in the product, so we appreciate you and your team's expertise. And who do we have next?
This is Srijith here, also from Bangalore, India. I'm one of the lead scrum architects, and yeah, I've been with ZENworks for past 12 years.
12 years. Srijith, thanks for coming aboard. I know it's late for you guys out in India. So what is your specialty in the ZENworks arena? It's so broad. What's your specialty?
Mostly Linux agents plus system updates, servers. Yeah, all around.
Perfect. Okay, so that's some of what we're talking about today. So I appreciate you joining us. And we have Harinath. Are you in?
Yep. Yeah,
Hi,
Paul.
how are you?
Harinath. Yeah, I'm good. I am one of the leads. Yeah, I've more than 10 years in the product. I think I've been working on appliance, install, upgrade, system update, and database migration.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah. And that database migration is really coming along, and really, you guys nailed it. I'm just so pleased with all my testing that I've done with it. It's just really worked out well. So
Thanks.
I don't know if you're welcome. Yeah. Elaine, how are you doing? Glad that you're you're in. The certificate remit enhancement is good, he mentioned. So yeah, look forward to that in the update 1. So system updates and are in database migration. Do we know how many people are migrating over to the PostgreSQL, or what brought us to move that direction? Harinath, do you have that answer?
I don't think. I mean, I don't have numbers like how many of people have moved. So.
Sure. But I mean, if they're on an expensive platform, being able to move on to a non-cost is an enhancement in itself, isn't it? And it works well. It really works well. So we appreciate all the work your team's doing on that. And we have Jason Backett. Jason, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Paul?
Very well. Thanks for joining us again. Glad to have you and your experience in ZENworks.
My experience is in ZENworks. I did support, training, and product management over the course of the last 20 years or so.
And I visited almost every training session I could think of that I remember you teaching in LA and Provo. It's great work. I appreciate your leadership and the teams that you have here working with ZENworks. It's been a really good. It's been just improving each time, and it keeps surprising me each time I do Zen. When I was a customer, it was like, oh, this is perfect. It's this update, that's it. And then you guys come up with something else, and it just keeps coming and coming. And coming up is what? Malware, right?
Yep,
Update
we're
2.
eagerly working on ZENworks anti-malware.
Fantastic.
For update 2.
That's awesome. Glad to hear that. Glad to see that come into the picture. I'm going to see if I can turn your display off since nobody has video. We do have audio. So chat, we have the lead people in ZENworks as well as some engineers on chat. If you have questions about system updates, otherwise we're going to basically go through some basic routines and things I think that as a customer, and again, I was a customer for many years, signed on with Micro Focus a couple years ago, and happened to be fortunate enough to be employed in the ZENworks team. And these are some of the things that I remember coming up with. If you have others, I think I'd shout them out because I can't remember them all. But one of the most important things from support, I think, is that would be really helpful. Oh, let me turn this on. Hang on, display 2. There we go. One of the things I think would be really important is being able to, you know what? We can do this. Hang on a second. Not that one. We have this one. Oh, I thought I had them lined up. I guess I didn't. I apologize for that. This one here has a chat, but it's not the display I was looking for. All right, we're going to go with this. So, with this particular, I think it was this one. Capture teams. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get the document up. If you could see it, that works. Document the environment. So being able to document the environment is like the most important thing you can do. There's those things that are fire and forget that are just for instance, 10 years you can do a 10-year certificate. Well, how do you do it 10 years later and 4 versions later? So document the environment is so important, and I've thrown some things out here to kind of display. If we have some engineers, what are some of the things in the environment that would be best to document? I don't know if I have them all here, but for instance, Vamsi, what would you need in order, and as far as documenting the environment? What system requirements are very important? the zone version, but as a customer, and I know this kind of throws you on, you're on the back end as far as engineering and preparing it for the customers, but I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you, what do you think as far as information that's required?
Yeah, I mean, there are many things that goes into planning your environment, especially so you may want to document what are the kind of platforms you support, that system requirements. Then you want to document the topology, which means how are your users connecting to the zone? So are there any remote users? Are there any people who will work from home? How do they connect back to the backend? So what are the kind of locations and network environments people will work from? I think you need to document that as well. Uh, the requirements of being able to expose your servers in the demilitarized zone. That's another thing on the top of my head that is important.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Srijith, Hari, you guys think of anything, feel free to chime in.
I'm going to switch over to. So yeah, I mean, even like the database, your database space requirements, or so here's a common question we get at support. You have a version 11.4 and you're going to 2017, and the database has changed from Oracle 11 to Oracle 12. Do you upgrade the database first, or do you upgrade your ZENworks system first? So do we have any comments out there on engineering side? So do you back up the database, or do you back up the? I'm sorry, not back up. Do you upgrade the database? And I know what the answer is. I was just trying to get some interaction. What you need to do is make sure the supporting upgrade for ZENworks goes to a supporting database. So you want to upgrade the database first, unless you have other comments.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. So first you have to upgrade the database.
Yeah. And I was looking, Jason's ZRS thing the other day got me more involved in going, well, health report. Why don't we just have a ZRS report that does the health report, so we could see what the space is, the memory is, all of those things. So you can tap into it with ZRS. So I started fiddling around in there, and that's where you can check for your database space, your server space. So there's a lot of reports in there that are right at our fingertips, but we just don't realize it until we prop up ZRS and play with it. So having some of those things, I think one of my projects in the back of my mind is to put together some type of a health report, so that if you're doing an upgrade, you download this report, put it in ZRS, you could see what, like you said, your platforms you're going to, what your system requirements are, primary server roles, and those types of things, because it's all in that particular, it's in the database. You just have to draw it out, right? So, and that's what I found with doing these ZENcasts, is it started to bring some of this together and unified. So we have other things like primary server roles, very important. What are some of the conditions that might require us to know the primary server roles if we're migrating or if we're upgrading, especially if it's appliances? So do we have, Srijith, do you have any comments on primary server roles? Is that your area?
Yeah, Paul, I didn't really get the question exactly.
So when doing system upgrades, primary server roles sometimes come into play, because if you're expiring a particular primary server or migrating to a new platform, what are some of the primary server roles that must be looked at? I know database is one of them. If the database resides on that primary server, you need to know that. And then
Right.
CA auth, certificate authority auth. What are the reasons for those primary server roles?
So every primary server has some designated roles which they are solely responsible for taking care of. So you probably need to ensure that those servers are appropriately backed up. I think if you're having a certificate authority role, then you probably need to take a backup of your CA and certificate information, etc. And there are other roles like starting from 2020, we also have server with has zookeeper role. So I think there are some specific functionalities which are dedicated on certain primary servers, and
Right.
so yeah, but mostly your upgrade process itself does not really need to be different based on which roles there are running. You can just go ahead and upgrade, and your system update will take care of managing your upgrade seamlessly, irrespective of what roles you have on them.
Right, right. Typically, the upgrade itself isn't too concerned about that. I mean, it works with that, but when you're doing a migration, it's really important, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and the other thing probably is your backup. And with 2020, we have introduced some of the new roles such as Kafka and Vertica. If you started using those roles, so it's very important that in preparation for the upgrade, customers take a backup of all these things, especially the appliances, so that if there is anything wrong during the update, they have a very good backup to fall back on. So that is something that I think post 2020, these are some of the new roles that customers should be aware of.
Sure, yeah, and that's right. 2020, we got Kafka, Zookeeper. There's a few different ones that are in there, and some are dependent just on a particular server. So if you're migrating off of that server for whatever reason, going from Windows to an appliance or something, you need to make sure that you have those details. So, and again, the reports can pull some of that stuff out. And as Steve mentions on the chat, having the backups that are in place prior to the upgrade or update, so you can roll back. Have a plan to roll out, right? Have a plan to back out of it. Everybody has a demarcation time where if we don't have it fixed by this time, we got to roll back. And so making sure that you have those particular items in place. We're going to move to, and you can pull things out like the ZCC and the diagnostics and configuration settings. And let's not forget about inventory only agents as well, right? So let's, other zone information. I know with this pandemic, we've had some calls and support about expiring certificates, right? One of them was a 10-year certificate that was expiring, and it hadn't been done in so long. So how do we manage that? How do we get that certificate out to the devices that are no longer on the network, right? So, and we do have a standalone updater there available for those particular instances. So Harinath, can you tell us a little bit about the schedules and how the schedules play into system updates? We got replication, collection, downloads, inventory, subscriptions, and those types of things. They can probably impact some of the updates. If we want to black out a schedule, or at least do it outside of some of the replication times so that we don't impact our devices that we're deploying to. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess Srijith can answer this question better.
Okay, Srijith?
Yeah, so your system updates itself, we don't specifically have a schedule. When normally you're scheduling your update times. So when you schedule when you need the updates to apply, I think we don't have a separate schedule for the replication of that content or distribution of that content as such. Normally you will schedule your system updates over during your off hours or some time which is generally convenient to the administrators,
Right.
so that the updates pull it down at the system, the agents pull it down at that time and apply that update.
And of course, having a test zone, right? Being able to see what it does before you actually do your production.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so easy. Having the appliance makes it so easy. Even if it isn't your whole environment in a test zone, at least you can see what a primary is going to do when it's in a similar configuration to your production when you do your upgrade. So I think it's real important to have a test environment, and you just throw up an appliance to be able to see that. So yeah, thank you for that. The replication schedule the schedule would probably be when you're actually deploying, like you said, to the devices. You set those schedules or stages. So another thing that there was last year, Arvind and myself did a health check webinar. So if you need to check the actual zone out, that particular health check webinar, I'll make sure to put that link in there as well. It's a webinar out there. It's about an hour long, and it checks each one of the health check of your zone. So things to check, logs to look at, checking expiring certificates and registrations and those types of things. And now with 2017 really, but the MDM servers come into play, and we got 2-year certificates for that expire for the MDM server that's holding or hosting the MDM communication. Is there somebody that can talk about that? Why is it 2 years and not 10 years like previously? And what are some of the contents behind that?
Yeah, maybe I can talk through it. So
Thank you.
basically, as part of the new guidelines from Apple, and as also part of a best practice from the iOS side of things, so they recommend that a certificate with a lifetime of anything greater than 2 years is not a very secure configuration. So because of that, the lifetime of the certificates that we generate for the management of Apple devices had to be adhering to that best practice, and so we have to give options for our customers to mint those certificates that way, because eventually Apple is going to mandate this, and the communication will be broken if the certificates don't adhere to that best practice. So consequently, in some sense, we are forced to come up with this solution. But in a way, from a security angle, it's going to benefit the customers to manage their servers in a better way.
Yeah, that's
So
more. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, so that's more of a mandate from the Apple to make sure that that's in place.
Right. Correct.
And so if you have a primary that manages those MDM servers, in update 1, we can actually manage that certificate for that server compared to the other 10-year certificate on the other primaries. Is that correct?
That is right. Yeah.
So update 1 has that enhancement as well. So it'll see which one has the MDM server or is using the MDM and applying those as well. So remember, as far as zone information, remember if you have ZRS, if you don't have ZRS, prop up an appliance, play with it a little bit. The CAN reports will give you some very, very detailed information on gathering some of those things you want to document. We're going to move into the preparing for upgrade stage. So the big part is document the environment. The nice thing, let me step back a minute for documenting the environment. The nice thing about that is when you call in for support because you have an issue with something, you can just reference that and it minimizes your need to go back and trying to dig it out. So be aware that's helpful all the way around, as well as your corporate documentation. Your manager comes to you and you can say, yep, here's the documentation for ZENworks. Preparing for the upgrade. Review the documentation of the upgrade, right? So making sure your system requirements are met. Identifying zone adjustments. Do you need you're on 2017 Sybase? Guess what? Need to migrate the database first. So we use the utility to migrate the database, and we kind of watch it for a week or two just to make sure we're comfortable with it before we move on. Because if we go too far, obviously you can't. If you go to 2020, at that point you can't revert back to Sybase, or you can't revert back to Sybase at all. So, and then identifying other things like certificate expiry date, and then some of the new features that are needed. The README, what's new, and the capabilities that are there. The Vertica database is big. for those large entities. MDM capabilities are improving all the time and getting enhanced all the time, as well as zone backups. So one thing I think that's been great, and I am not sure who on the team might have performed this, but I noticed in the ZDC, we actually have a system information tab now, starting in 2017, somewhere middle 2017 or so, which really helps identify if you're using the right ZDC with the right zone. I thought that was genius. I mean, it really helps out with understanding, if you run the wrong one, you're going to have a bunch of errors. So at least you can compare in the system information zone. I do have a mention from Valerie. Our Oracle DBAs like to know what SQL scripts are doing when run on a database when updating. Is there a copy of the SQL script available? So I'm going to pass that on to our engineers that are on. If there's somebody that can answer to the DBA's request of knowing what the scripts are doing. Is there a place to look? Is there a log to review?
Yeah, so the SQL scripts are mostly making changes to the or any new schema in changes that we are introducing release over release. Those changes to the schema are what we run on the database as during the pre-global phase. There is a pre-global log where you can see which the progress of the pre-global itself, but I don't think we actually dump the SQL queries in there. It's kind of in the part of your binaries that we ship. So
Okay. So it's go ahead.
No, the thing is, during upgrade, we do two kinds of things. Like Srijith mentioned, there are schema updates, which take care of changes in the database tables. So there are DDLs, which are data definition language files. So if the customers are really interested, they can actually open up the jars and figure out those SQLs from those jars. So that is something that is possible. But there are also some more scripts we run, which are our configure actions during the upgrade or system update. So basically, during this phase, what we do is if there is any data that needs to change to adopt to the new features that we have developed in a given release. For example, if there has to be any data migration that requires to be done, or if some default values needs to be populated in some of the columns in the newly introduced tables. So some of these configure actions take care of that responsibility. So so to cut the long story short, if we require the full set of SQLs, they are not readily available. If the request is specifically around what kind of schema changes that are happening, maybe there is a way to extract it from our jar. So
from the jar files. Okay. So that makes sense. I mean, you have a series of, and it depends on what type of database. I mean, this upgrade is trying to fully encompass all the possibilities of table updates and indexes and all of that stuff. And so the jar file is if you want to see what's going on, you can extract those. But otherwise, it's pretty much on the binary side. Does that help, Valerie? I hope that helps. Being able to dive into those jar files might give them some clue, but the pre-global actions will show you a 10,000 foot view of what's going on with the database. It really doesn't have all the details of each of the scripts, but basically it's enhancing the tables or adding to the tables and adjusting all those database details. So hopefully that helps. Thanks for the question, Valerie. Keep the questions coming. We got the people on the line to answer your questions, so keep it coming. Again, scheduled downtime and admins. We've had support where we'll have an Oracle, but the Oracle DBA wasn't aware, and so next thing you know, we need to track him down, delaying your ability to continue with the system update. So try to include all the personnel in that, at least make them aware that you're upgrading. Yes, you're welcome there, Valerie. So make everybody aware that's on the team, because I know when I was at my previous employer, we had Oracle, and he would say, "You didn't let me know that was happening," and because sometimes the install goes so smooth, and you run it through test, which is really a sterile environment, right? And next thing you know, it's working fine. So you schedule it and kind of put in your change control. But if you forget to notify that DBA, sometimes that can delay. And it happened to me a couple times. So I understand the frustration behind that. Upgrade the test zone environment. It may be sterile, but meaning that it doesn't have everything your product environment has, but at least you can see what's going to happen and what to expect, like the licensing keys, right? Being able to do the licensing keys. And a few weeks ago when we did our migration to upgrade, we were able to see that license change between suite. If you change from suite to product or product to suite, they actually put that in the install or the upgrade process to be able to switch that. So they've done a great job with that. So pre-global actions, people are talking. Thanks, Srijith. Thanks for the input. And sorry, Susan. Yeah, I have some of those links are marked out because we don't want people spamming, but I understand what's going on. If I'll need to adjust that so my mods can throw in those details, the links. So I appreciate the mods out there, Susan, being able to try and throw in our links as we go. But I unfortunately have a setting wrong in my system, so I'll adjust for that. And again, these links will be at the bottom of the recording as we go along. I'll try and be better prepared next time with those. Implementation. So now it's, I started doing implementation. And they go, well, what if the database needs to be upgraded? Then that's not really the upgrade, right? So I split up the implementation into two different parts: the system requirements and then implementing the upgrade, because I think it's necessary to if you're doing a system upgrade for the database first, before you go to 2020, which requires a PostgreSQL or another DB, you need to make sure that it's off the Sybase, and you need to run that for a week or so, right? To be able to make sure that those are good. So what are some of the implications that we've had with database upgrade? We have if we're going from Sybase, and do we have people in the crowd out there that are on Sybase? I'm really curious to see. It was a common one. I mean, even my test databases at my previous employer had Sybase because it was just so easy and just worked through. But going to 2020, you obviously needed to migrate that. What are some of the issues that we have going from Sybase to PostgreSQL? One of them I know of was being able to administer the PostgreSQL. So there are some database utilities out there that can do that. PGAdmin is the one I use. But are there some others out there? Do we have some mentions in the engineering as far as what does engineering use as far as managing these different databases? That's what I'm going to throw out there, because you have Oracle, MS SQL, some products have MySQL. What can we answer to that?
So, Paul, you're asking the database administration tool you're asking about to use various databases?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we use dbeaver Community Edition through which you can actually access all the different databases. So all that you'll have to add is the driver that you want to use for that database. So you can use for virtually all the databases that ZENworks supports, like PostgreSQL, MS SQL, and Oracle.
Got you. Okay, yeah, and I've always wondered that, because there's so many out there. Which ones does the developers use? So dbeaver is one of them. I know PGAdmin is exclusive, I think, to PostgreSQL, and Yeah, I noticed that one thing that I've had, does dbeaver, can I ask a question about dbeaver? Does dbeaver also have the issue where you need to encode like pgadmin does?
Yes, I mean, there is a setting that you have to do that, after which it will work. So there's a global setting that you can do that works for all the databases.
Okay. Okay. So it's just a setting. It's not something you have to code into like pgadmin. Okay. That's good to know. Server upgrade if needed, the OS upgrade. So being able to make sure that you upgrade the OS and then allocate needed disk space, memory, and CPU. So you're implementing the system requirements. You're trying to get those out there and make sure everything's ready for the upgrade. And then I noticed and I've heard during the system when you implement the upgrade, not to go through PuTTY or SSH terminal. Can somebody on the phone give us some type of indication or reason why that is?
Yeah, so generally, if you are trying to do a database migration using a PuTTY session, like you are probably running on a laptop. Probably there is a possibility that there could be internet connection. I mean, network connection disconnection happens. At that time, it will be broken. So like whatever has happening on the PuTTY session, that would be like lost, and then you would have like it's as good as like killing it. So you won't be able to get it back. So it's advised to get be on the server and run from there.
Oh, I see. Okay, so so once it's started and if some disconnect happens, then now you just botched it and we got to start anew. So yep, thank you. Thanks for that explanation. I know I've had a habit of doing that in my previous employer. You PuTTYs just so often dial into connect to via PuTTY or SSH, and then but let's not do that with the implementation of the upgrade. And ZENworks services off on all other primaries. Does the upgrade look for that? Do that? What does the upgrade do when you're implementing that in this stage?
The system update, when you do a deployment, it is as the intelligence to connect to the other primary servers in the zone and stop the services on them. So we do it through using the quick task framework to ensure the services are stopped on other primaries in the zone. And then the actual server which is doing the first update, it also stops services before actually starting off your pre-global phase. And until your entire upgrade is completed, it also ensures that the services are prevented from starting up in the middle.
And why? Why do we need to stop it on another primary server? I know the answer, but let's display it for the audience.
Yeah, so the main reason is we all our code that is running is code that is of a previous version, and we are doing an update to the schema, and there might be possible changes which are impacting the previous version of the code. And while we are doing this upgrade and during the upgrade process, we don't want those background maintenance actions coming and playing spoil sport where they update some information which is not really correct, or things which end up failing and interfering with the upgrade. So that's the main reason behind ensuring that they are stopped.
Got you. So yeah, we don't want to be updating the database while we're updating the system, right? And from some other agent or application or something like that. So that makes complete sense. And again, we deploy first to the primary with the database role. Make sure it's successful. So as you're going through this and you deploy your very first one, once it says, okay, we're going to do a system reboot, you do a system reboot, go back into ZCC and double check that it says successful, because it still has to rebuild those packages for the agents, right? So make sure it's successful first, and then deploy the upgrade subsequent primaries. Make sure those are successful, then upgrade the satellites. And basically, at that point, your upgrade is done. You want to make sure your primaries and satellites are all on the same version, right? So I didn't even put in this list the upgrading the managed devices, because that's really a post upgrade task. So I put it over here. You make sure there's some things in the post upgrade that you need to make sure you double check. And one is reconfiguring any systems that are attached to it. If Service Desk is attached for importing, if ZRS is attached, you want to make sure and reconfigure if necessary, because it's a new database, right? If you went from Sybase to Postgres, it's ZRS is not going to pick up that database obviously anymore. So be aware. Do I have a comment from the engineers? Not yet. Okay, I thought I heard something. Thank you. Just interrupt me if you have something. Configure the features and enhancements. Back up the upgraded zone. So you have a backup and falling back, but now that you've had everything successful, make sure it's backed up. Upgrade the corporate document with the upgraded information, meaning that you've upgraded to 2020 update 1, whatever it is. And then you can also deploy those ZAA managed devices as needed. And a lot of these work interchangeably, right? So, and then don't forget about those inventory only agents. So that's the upgrade in an essence. What are some of the things we can look for? And it all depends. And this is a broad statement. What if it fails, right? If it fails, well, where did it fail? Did it fail on the system requirements? Did it fail on the database upgrade? What are some of the logs to help us through some of these?
Sure.
And go ahead. Oh, I thought I heard somebody. What are some of the logs we can go through? We have the system update log, which is the system update itself. But prior to that, we have what? We have the pre-global, and we have there is a ZENworks update or upgrade log. So there's different logs in the logs directory that you can look at, and I sort them by date and timestamp so you can see the current ones on top. Because if you've upgraded your zone multiple times, you'll see multiple upgrade logs in there. There's been some scouring of and we've displayed this once before, there's been some scouring of the documentation that we've looked at, and you're able to see a path by doing upgrades. And for instance, 2008, you can easily see that 2008 is no longer supported in 2017, right? So you can see if you're on 2008, I'm going to need to upgrade to a higher level, and these are the higher level options. And then, of course, 2019 comes in with 2020 if you wanted to, the Windows 2019. So we've scoured some of these documentations. Memory issues, what's the minimum? Of course, with Vertica, you're going to need 16. So we have this documentation as well. This is going to be put into a training video on updating, but it's kind of one of the things as when I was a customer was trying to navigate through. I'm at 11.4 going to 2017, and what are the system requirements between them that have either dropped off or added that maybe I don't want to go to the 2012 server. Maybe I already have a 2016. I'll go directly to 2016. So that way I jump the gun on when 2012 expires, right? So there's always those. So there's different things in here that we've scoured to be able to see the path that we need to go. 11G, 12, 18, 19 were included in ZCM 2020. I'm hoping that this is important or is helpful to those customers out there to be able to view, so you can get a status on those types of products and how they fit into the zone. So do we have any mentions in those that are on audio about what are some of the common things we've seen with an upgrade that may stop an upgrade? And it may be something as simple as system requirements, but you put a lot of scripting in to detect that you have older agents out there, or you have an older OS that doesn't work on 2020. You know, like XP, it's backwards compatible, but it's still in the zone. What are some of the things that you have as parameters to be able to detect system updates from halting?
So we generally check whether all the primary servers that you have are supported operating systems or not. If not, we will flag that, and if we look for the agents, if they are supported versions or not. That's the things that we check. If they are not, then we will be listing them.
Gotcha.
And something like disk space, that if you are not having sufficient disk space, or at some times it could be the RAM that is available as well.
And I remember for the VMs, make sure you have it dedicated, right? The RAM.
Yeah.
Yeah. So make sure you have dedicated RAM out there for the VMs so that we don't run into any of those issues. Is there anybody on stream that has a question regarding upgrades and what you may have run into as far as issues with your system upgrade and something that we can maybe improve upon that we've seen, but maybe we need to fix? And now we do have a 60 to 90 second delay, so I'll wait for things to come in on chat here for a little bit. So we have these things. The biggest thing I think is document the environment, having a ZDC, being able to reference something, double checking the health check of the zone is another one. Let's see. What if, okay, I'm not getting anything in chat just yet. What if we're, I'm trying to throw out a scenario. We're coming from 11.4 to 2020, which means we have to go through 2017. What are the steps we have to go through for doing that?
So we will have to upgrade from 11.4 to 2017 first, and from there we should be able to upgrade to 2020.
And so do
yeah.
Sorry. So do we need to go to update 4 on 2017?
Not necessary. So you can be on any of the 2017 version to go to 2020. So the prerequisite is 2017.x, any update on 2017 basically.
Gotcha. And so let's say we're on 11.4.2. Do we need to go to 11.4.3?
Not really. So you can go to 2017 directly, and from there you can go to 2020.
Perfect. Okay. So save some steps of having to stair step it all the way up, just so you're aware that the quickest way is just to get to the next level, make sure your system requirements are within the parameters of the next build. And so you can go directly to 2017, and then the next build for 2020, you can go directly into that as long as you have those details and those system requirements taken care of. Nothing in chat yet. I don't see anything else. Susan, if you want to try that link again, I made some adjustments. Hopefully you can post that link. Let me see. I thought I had something I wanted to display. Oh, so can we talk a little bit? I think we're pretty much done with our system upgrade. If I don't have, oh, here we go. We clone our zone, test and upgrade in that before we do pre-product to avoid issues. So thank you, Valerie, for that note. So cloning the zone. So let me, and I'm going to ask our people that are on audio here, if you're cloning your zone, what do you have to do? Because you can't have two zones with the same. What are you doing with the database? Are you throwing it into the test system? And do you have to make changes? is there a script to take care of that, or is that all manual? Do we have somebody on audio that can answer to cloning, being able to, you want to do an upgrade and you want to basically do it on, you want a replica of your, if I'm looking at Valerie's mention right, you want a replica of your production in your test environment. So you're cloning it. So you're just dropping the database over, right?
Yeah, I mean, cloning a very small zone with probably a single server and an embedded database is an easier task. But when there are large or complicated deployments where there are multiple servers and the database, it's usually a little bit of involved process because we have to change the IP addresses and maybe the certificates, etc., etc. So internally, we have manual steps to do it, but it is not published for customers in an automated fashion that they can clone easily. But yeah, like maybe in this case, maybe Valerie is using a single server or a small zone where cloning the VM itself would have helped.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and of course they probably have DBAs that are knowledgeable in doing some of that stuff, or they have people that are knowledgeable in doing that. So because I don't ask me to do it because it's I don't have the expertise in the DBA to clone it and move it over. So that's what I use snapshots for. But anyway, thank you, Valerie, for that comment. That's a great mention. Being able to clone your zone into a test so that you can run it on your test to see what happens. And that actually happens more than I think we know. We do have customers out there doing that. Any other comments out in chat before we close the session on upgrades, and we're going to discuss a little bit about off-network workers. I don't see any others in chat. Feel free if something comes to mind. We have the people on audio to be able to answer your questions. So feel free to jump in and be able to participate in asking questions and so forth. I appreciate the questions that have come through so far. If you joined us late, we are on with some engineers from Bangalore and Provo, Jason, Srijith, Harinath, and Vamsi, who are answering questions about system upgrades and things to help us prevent or improve our prevent issues, but improve our actual upgrade process. So, and if you have any suggestions or anything, feel free to send them to me as far as, and we'll see if we already have that in detail. So let's move on to off-network workers. So we have some off-network workers. There's a couple of, I just want to short, I didn't get a chance. Craig mentioned to me that he gave me some details on putting together a VPN and setting it up. I didn't get a chance to complete that. It's not 100%, and I know the demo gods would attack me all over the place. So, working from home, obviously in this pandemic, we still need to manage those devices, and one of the most common is VPN, obviously, both for ZCM and non-ZCM communication, right? So you have devices that are on ZCM that need updates or remote control or whatever, and then non-ZCM devices that are not required to have ZENworks on them in your environment. Remote control is encrypted, just so you know, it's encrypted, so that's just fine. And content and system updates work well through the VPN. So that's a very common practice. Let me ask the engineers on audio, what have we seen? Have we seen any influx in requests or issues or things that we're trying to fix regarding ZCM and being able to contact devices outside the network or outside the zone network?
So I'll step first. We've definitely seen an influx of people requesting information on how to do it. And as a result of that, I guess it was 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
We released an update to the best practices guide that specifically had some information on best practices for deploying ZCM to support devices in the DMZ. And so there's a bunch of best practices there. We also have, as we were evaluating that, we identified a set of things that we probably need to make some changes to in the future to offer some better support that we'll be working on over the course of the next couple of releases. But for the most part, I, for instance, have my zone sitting in the DMZ here and can access it from wherever and have basically the same functionality. The best practices guide does a really good job of making sure that you think of important things like maybe you don't want people to be able to run ZCC in the DMZ, or maybe you don't want new devices to be able to register from the ZCC or from out in the DMZ. You only want devices that have at some point been registered into this system to be able to contact those servers. So there's a lot of good discussion in the best practice about some of those kinds of things.
Thank you for that. I'm displaying the best practices now so that they can see that it's out in the best practice documentation, DMZ configuration. And so VPN and DMZ, two separate things, right?
Yeah. So for instance, in the way I run mine, I can get all the management capabilities. My device can get bundles and policies and patches and remote control without ever firing up the VPN because I've got my server in the DMZ, which means I've got in my case, I happen to have a reverse proxy sitting in front of it. But you could also put a primary right in there, configure the firewall, the DNS naming. There are a number of things that you've got to consider when you do those to make sure you have it secure, and also to make sure, for instance, maybe that server has both an internal and an external DNS name. There's some extra configuration you've got to go through to make sure that it can be resolved, both ways. You might need to make some changes to your closest server rules so that it can properly detect, oh, I'm not in the office, I'm outside the office, so let's make sure I use the server that's in the DMZ instead of trying to hit all the servers that are inside that internal firewall. Those kinds of things.
So like locations and stuff, making sure those are
correct.
Configured. Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good. Yeah, I see ways to. You obviously don't want to broadcast your ZENworks setup download for the agent so people can attach to it and those types of things. So there's all sorts of good details in this particular documentation. I'll have links to most of these on the published recording. But if you go out to the DMZ best practices, if you're doing a DMZ, VPN obviously works great, pretty much takes care of it. But the DMZ, if you wanted to do that, it has some great details for just hooking up a DMZ with reverse proxy. So I appreciate that, Jason. And we're always improving like user stories and enhancements around the out of network worker space. We want to let you know that we're really trying to see what the users have. For instance, the new best practices doc, Valerie mentions the new best practices doc is very useful. Made more sense than the old documentation, so we've improved on that. We've gotten more details on that particular setup, especially in today's world that we're all locked down. So yeah, closest server rules, managing mobile devices, registration firewall rules, remembering all of those details. If you have VPN, you're probably using it, and it's probably a no-brainer. But if you need to manage otherwise through a DMZ, be sure to check that documentation out. So we went through system upgrades, what to do, how to kind of go over kind of a 10,000 foot view. Look for a couple of training videos that are coming down the line, both for database migration as well as system upgrade to 2020. And then there'll be soon one following for update 1, which is just another system update from 2020 to update 1 is pretty natural. You guys have done these plenty of times. But the one thing that we're really concerned about, making sure that you get that Sybase taken care of, so you're on another supported database for the 2020 as you move there, because there's a lot of exciting features in 2020. A lot of exciting features. So I'm looking around. We had some participation in chat. We appreciate everybody chiming in. Valerie, Elaine, Aaron, Mark. I'm hoping that this has been helpful to you this week. Next week we're going to try something a little bit different. Also, we're gonna be connecting the dots with customer service. So your entitlement isn't working. Who in the field can? How do I get a demo? Right? There's just some of these questions that we're just uncertain. I want to let you know that I'm trying to put together a group of people that actually go out there and take care of you, the customer in the field, as well as on the back lines, these engineers that are on the phone today, their team, and us support people. But there are those questions that we don't know. How do I get a demo of that new product? How do I know how to do this particular sequence? Upgrade my service desk with a store and those types of things. I'm trying to get some of those people together so that we can. You might recognize the faces, recognize the names, but we're gonna talk with them next week, and there'll be more details coming. But we want to really make sure that you know that you have somebody you can connect to, whether it's your customer care representative, whether it's an SE, PSE, support, us support. Everybody really works as a great team in Micro Focus, and we'll get you to the right person, even if initially it's not the right person. I just want you to know that. If there's any questions you have at all, feel free to email me, paul.pedron at microfocus.com. And we can get you to the right person to answer the question. Or if you're looking for an upcoming beta, if your Lighthouse has already been assigned, so that's pretty much done. But as we go into update 2, if you want to be on the beta, zen@microfocus.com. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to send them my way. We want this forum to be for you, so it's productive for you in your environment. And we're hoping that this avenue helps give a little more detail and upfront answers for you. Any other questions on chat? Do we have any other questions with the engineers? I appreciate you guys getting up so early or staying up so late for us out in Bangalore, and Jason, Vamsi, Srijith, and Harinath. I appreciate you guys coming aboard and being with us today. I don't have any other comments. I think we're just about done for today's ZENcast. Crickets. Thanks, guys. Hey, everybody, make sure you stay safe. Yes, somebody come on. I thought I heard somebody. Nope. Okay. Everybody stay safe. Thank you, engineers, for being here, and all the PMs that have been on ZENcast and in the past. Stay safe. Keep your family safe. We'll get through this together. We're here for you during this time, and just have a great Easter week. Take care.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Vamsi, Srijith, Harinath.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.